Hi, everyone. Shelby Jo Long, President of the Strategic Advisor Board and CEO of Business Dynamics. And I have the opportunity to interview people who have created businesses out of their genius so they can live a life of their passion and influence others in the way that they have already transformed the world. And today is no exception. Gary and I just met this week and started talking about his project and what he has going on. I'm very excited to hear more about it and help him introduce his idea to the world. So Gary Otte and his documentary Saving 22, that's coming out next week here in Billings, Montana. That's what we're going to learn about today. So Gary, welcome to the interview. I'm glad you're here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And it's great to be here.
Of
Yeah.
course. Can you give us your quick background? Tell us a little bit about you and who you are, and then we'll get into your creative venture.
Right. Well, after I got out of the Army, I moved to Denver to go to school, and I used my GI Bill. Growing up, art was always my thing. And I thought, I went to an art school in Denver, and I was thinking that, okay, I'm going to be doing some industrial design or, something like that, right? Drawing or something along those lines, sketchings or whatever. And talked to the counselor, as and she says like, well, what, she's just trying to get to know me. And through the course of conversation, she asked about TV and music. And it's like, oh yeah, I, listen to music and I watch TV. And it's like, I have my songs and my shows, right? And like everybody else. And she's like, well, we have a program, that you might be interested in. And music and video. Went into school for that. And then I thought I was going in for music because it's like I could totally see myself at the board. You go to a show and then there's that fence off area and the dude at the board, right? I was like, you know what? That'd be cool. That'd be a lot of fun. I didn't understand a lick of audio. And to this day, it's like audio is just about the extent of mine is like, hitting the volume button, and that's about the extent of my audio. But for whatever reason, video made sense, and I never had a reason to follow that path. I just, watched TV and you didn't think about the technicals. I'm from a small town, ultra small town, 30 people, and the town I was bused to was 1,500. And so, not no complaints, it was a great background, but in like a farming community, and it's just that's not, one of the things that's offered. And I mean, I had 4-H and I had the opportunity to do, go into some photography, and I tried, but it just didn't grab me. And so when I started understanding video, I was like, okay, this is kind of odd. Each quarter someone was graduating. It was only a 2-year school. So every quarter someone had, a group, a class had to put on a concert. They were the king. They in within that class, they provided the cameras, the audio, the lighting, the promotions, and everything else. And it's like and then working with the promoter, which he was the instructor of the class. They would get the venue and everything else, right, and the band and everything. And they always needed volunteers because it was the classes weren't so full. And I got a chance to, operate, or well, I was a cable puller for the handheld guy. He was at the stage. He got mad because they weren't taking his shots, and he just set the camera on the stage. And I looked around, I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna try it. So I did, and then they started taking my shots. It's like, yep, this is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life. And that was,
Hmm.
well, mid 90s. So I've been doing it since.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that you clicked with. It's something that's very natural to you,
Yeah,
and now
yeah,
and and you've continued doing that. So it's been a long
yeah.
time since the 90s. I'm
It's
a
been a
90s.
little bit, yeah.
So tell me about the journey from that point until well, now, or at least the start to the production of your documentary.
Right. And well, I lived in Denver, and I got into um got into some production work, but I kind of become freelance, pretty quick, relatively quick. And so I was, shooting sports, I was shooting other live events. I was, and then I thought that was fun, and I knew camera was what I always wanted to do. And watching sports as I always did, I was like, man, that's some skill and that's some talent. And so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. I'm going to do that because I want to be I want to be skilled at, camera work, and I for the longest time I thought I was just going to be always be a camera guy and a lighting camera guy. And then but it was always one of those things where I never got enough calls, and so I'd do okay, but then I wouldn't do it, and it was like always feast and famine. And I did that for a long time. And, with my figuring, with my, being in the army, that man, you're amped up, you're ready to go, and then you have all this nothing, right? And I get it. It's like, there's feast and famine to everybody, and you always have to, hoof it. You have to get out there, beat the pavement, and you have to hustle, right? And I get that, and I tried, but it was just always I always just had enough, and I never felt like I was doing what I wanted or getting enough. And I tried. I got into independent filmmaking. There's no money in it. The only ones that get paid are the ones the blockbusters, right? The
Yeah.
big movies. But I still loved it in any way. I mean, it was one of those things where as I was shooting sports, I gotta work on my camera work, with the independent movies and shorts. I gotta really improve my craft, myself and my craft, lighting, different shots, how to, different things like that. The artistry
Oh,
of cinema or of movies and films and stuff like that. But I still wasn't enough. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't sustaining. Eventually tried going out to LA, and I found out I don't know, I didn't relate to anybody because a lot of people were, starting out or might not have had all the experience I did. Because it took me, a few years to get the confidence to go. It's funny, as I was in the army, but I was lacking confidence. It's a weird thing. But I didn't have the confidence in myself. And I
well,
just, I,
that's a new venture, and that's a
yeah, yeah,
stepping
it
out on
didn't,
your own, and
yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it didn't work. And while I was married at the time, and that was kind of when everything started crashing on me. I just, I separated myself from her. Wasn't the greatest of people, didn't treat her well. And it was because it's like, all the angst, all the energy, all this stuff that has to go into something I mean, I didn't have a purpose,
Right.
and I was fighting my everyday. I didn't know, I'd get annoyed, and then people wouldn't, I mean, it would, there's a saying within, well, within the video, in the video world, is that there's nothing greater than the next project, and no project that you're on is better than the last project. And so you're always stuck in a catch 22. There's no hope for joy, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a joke, but I mean, I kind of, fell that way, and I just wasn't getting the contacts I wanted. And I did, and it was one of those things where, I was in a big place I was in LA for the first time, and I was so overwhelmed. It's like I didn't know where to go. And everywhere you go is like, they're asking like, well, can you do this for free? Can you do this for free? It's like, in order to get in, or can you do this? And, but, it's not for free. It's not, you're not getting paid. And LA is pretty expensive,
Mhm.
and, you kind of have to have a job. And I was trying to go after mine. And, I only lasted maybe 3 or 4 years, and then I moved back to Kansas, where I'm from, and just kind of had to do a reset. It's like, okay, what's going on? But I was also really starting to, face my demons, and I had been out at that point maybe 20 years,
Mhm.
and I still hadn't, faced my stuff. And
Sure.
I was starting to finally realize that, man, I got some problems. I mean, one of the biggest issues with veterans is we, face this new world. It's called, in the civilian world, is, I had anger issues. And you go along, and I mean, I was cycling, and I was just like a lot of people. And I was cycling, I would go along. It's like, okay, cool, if I just keep, maintain, if I just keep a level head, be cool, and not get mad, not let things get to me, I can stuff it and I'll be all right. And then eventually just keep doing that. And then I mean, you know how that works. It doesn't.
Mm.
And I would blow up on somebody. I would lose chances because I blew up on somebody. And then I'd start, I'd feel bad and like, dog, tail between the legs, and I'd feel bad. And it's like, God, what's wrong with me? And, that has, I mean, that really was my, I cycled, yeah, up until like 2020. And the funniest thing
And the
is,
world changed.
isn't that, I mean, I'm sure,
It's amazing how serendipitous that all is, you know?
right? Yeah, because it's like, as much as well, it's like I have my opinions about everything went down, but as crummy as everything kind of looked like, as bleak as everything was looking like for everybody, that was the best thing that ever happened, which is I've heard that from a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's so odd because I hope we never go through that, but it allowed people kind of a rebirth, and it definitely, and well, within, prior to 2020, a few years prior, I met Mitch and Karen, the co-founders of Adaptive Performance Center. It's a nonprofit. Well, it was before then. It was before the four walls, but it was only um, an idea, an ideal, but
Mhm.
it's currently now a thing. It's a fitness center for veterans and current service members here in Billings. And I got, connected with them, working on a project. And they asked me, is that, and, kind of, it was an ongoing project. And so they kind of got to, see me and get to know me a little bit better. Cause I was still living in Kansas, and,
Yeah.
I was going back and forth between here and Kansas City. And they got to know me a little bit, and they say, hey, we have the documentary we want to make. It's called, it's about veteran suicide. We didn't have a name for it. We want to make a, documentary about veteran suicide. And it's like, okay, cool, I'm in. Because it's like, those are my brothers and sisters. Made no correlation whatsoever. I mean, I never had the thoughts, the plans, the coordinates, or anything like that. But we do have those dark days. I mean, when I left LA and I was, got my divorce, those are my darkest days I've ever been. Everything just hit, and everything was dark. It was the Rolling Stones' Black, Everything Turned to Black song, and I was drinking heavily. I was drinking every night, but I was drinking ultra heavily. And then get into, the making the movie. I mean, I just, okay, well, every now and then it's like, man, this kind of crummy, this kind of suck. And so, maybe, if there's only an end, whatever that end is, it's like,
Yeah.
just can there be an end? And, and ultimately what happened, I said yes. I was thinking I was, helping my brothers and sisters, but really saving 22 saved me because I look at it as an opportunity that I got to meet myself. Those are some pretty unfun days, but it was also one of those
Yeah.
things where it kind of reminded me I was back in the military again. I was it was just shy of me wearing the uniform because I'm working in a place around veterans. I'm working in a place that's, that speaks my, farm language, as I grew up around it, right? We, cuss galore, right? And, and you say your stories, and it's like, and points to you if you have the most messed up story, and make people laugh, right? Things that you just can't necessarily say around, people on the corner, right? I finally found my feathers, my people, my tribe, my, block, and stuff like that. And so I, s- even though it was difficult showing up to work every day, I looked at it as another enlistment because I was getting these amazing stories. So many, so many people.
I want to get to the project, and I want to back up a little bit and kind of
Yes,
get
ma'am.
into, so the Saving 22 project,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was that idea. Again, there seems to be some serendipity in your life, right? Things just
Yep.
come to you at the right point, and then that intuition, we talked about it yesterday, but it's
Yes.
just things just kind of show up at the right time.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
your business partners are the ones that inspired that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're all
Right.
about fitness. They're into health and fitness, and Mitch and Karen, they were working at a fitness center here in Billings as trainers. She taught yoga. So they also taught, these other these classes. They were instructors. And, um she has some of her own, man, what was it? She had some rough days with her husband. He was called up. He's Navy Reserve, got called up
Mhm.
after 9/11. He got messed up in the head. And there's some, anyway, they ended up getting divorced, and she decided to, like, okay, you know what? I'm no longer going to be a therapist in just sitting on a couch. I'm going to start. And she'd seen how people change just by working out. And
Sure.
so she and Mitch decided that, we got to start doing something. And they trained the National Guard, because, I mean, well, they don't have the intensity that active Army does, and that was my background. Well, I was active and then reserves, so I did my 8 years. But comparatively, the National Guard doesn't necessarily have the same intensity. But it also depends on their job too. So, sometimes, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not trying to, diminish, because I'm not. It's just there's some differences, right, within the jobs. And, and it's very difficult to keep in shape,
Yeah.
regardless. And that was what they were doing. They were helping the National Guard unit to maintain their shape, their fitness. And they saw that, they had all this wealth of knowledge and experience that, what they say is like, move your body, heals the mind. And that was their, oh yeah, that's been their premise, since the initial, since day one,
And also being in Montana, they probably have their finger on the pulse and
for sure.
of the frequency of veteran suicide in this
Yeah,
state.
absolutely. And
It's a big state, but it's a small state all at the same time.
yeah,
It's
it's a small town,
everybody
isn't it?
connected. And so
Absolutely.
I'm sure they felt the
Yeah. Yeah,
pull
I'm
getting that
sorry.
into the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off.
No, no, no.
But yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because they had somebody in the unit that they were training take his life. And so they weren't necessarily close to him, but,
Mm.
seeing that was that close,
That's so
and
hard.
seeing how it affected people, they said, man, we got to do something. And the beautiful thing is, since starting well, I mean, they started, APC started 3 weeks before the lockdowns. And so, but thankfully they were categorized as a mental health. And so they were allowed to stay open.
Open. Great.
Yep. And what they've witnessed is people were ready to go, but nobody's followed through. Because, like, once they get in, there's a magic, around these different groups. Because APC has their magic, and there's so many different groups, nonprofit, service providers for veterans, that, dogs, dog tag buddies, and horses spirits healing, and um, Beartooth Haven, and veteran caregivers. I mean, all these different people helping veterans navigation, all these people helping. And they have stories from their members that, it's like they know of, some people know of like 6, 7, 8, maybe more people who took their lives. And then you get into that organization, and nobody, they know nobody. So it's hard to get, clinicals, like, yes, it's proof, right? But it's
Yeah.
all eyewitness accounts. And, so that's a gift, being a part of a solution.
100%. And then you look, so I want you to talk a little bit about because the documentary, which is coming out this week, so we'll talk about that. But I want you to talk about that process of it, because I almost feel that you're telling the stories and trying and being vulnerable and encouraging other people to be vulnerable. And that's a mental health thing too. And I think you talked about how it's something that saved you. Uh, you're saving other people too. That's got to be a tremendous feeling. So can you walk us through the documentary and kind of tell us the premise of it and how it's put together and how you use your gift to help extend that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question because yeah, I was like I said, every day I was facing myself. And those days that I had an interview, I would go have a conversation, record the conversation for about an hour, hour and a half. And I was sitting there listening to these people going, and they don't know me from anybody. All they know is that I'm a veteran. And all they know is that I'm telling a story about, suicide. And they are connecting to me because they were veterans, and B, they truly understand that talking about your problems helps diminish the problems and it allows them to heal a little bit. And also, I also says like, well, this is an opportunity for you to say, because like what you're going through, your words, is like gonna, not gonna, the words are gonna be different, but what you're going through is what somebody else is going through, but in another state, and they just don't have the opportunity to talk. And so what I was, what we, I mean, I kind of look at, I mean, it was a team, I mean, again, it was another enlistment for me
Yeah.
because I was working with these people and going through, and then I would come back and I'd have all this weight, I'd have all these interviews, that they were, again, telling me their worst day. And then I was sitting there at the computer and I'd have to like listen to it over and over and over. Okay, I can use this snippet. I can use this snippet with something else, and tell the complete picture of what it's like because it's not a war movie. It's a war at home movie, is what it is. And so I didn't want to. I used very little. There was a couple times, but there was very little that I used of being in uniform. What I wanted is there's a guy who at the time was working for himself. He bought an excavator and he was building a house, and he was building the basement, digging the basement. So I filmed him digging the basement with this excavator, and he's sitting there talking about these Scud missiles coming at him. And I really wanted the dichotomy that where he's in his civilian clothes working a civilian job with the military experience and facing, it's like, man, this could be my last day. And I wanted that dichotomy because we don't know what that person is going through next to us. And that's extreme, but we all have our extremes, right? And so Saving 22, putting it together, I wanted it to be in such a way that, man, I don't know this person, but man, I bet we can connect on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I bet we can really relate to on enough to be cool, hang out, and just like, enjoy our favorite brew, whether it's beer or coffee, doesn't matter. We can just hang out and just, shoot the breeze and make sure that everybody's okay. And so what I really wanted to do with this movie is get people to really think about their mental health. And so even though the movie Saving 22 is about what we veterans go through after we get out of the military and what we face, it really is. And even though I talk about the deep, dark, and depressive, I really want people to understand that, with a problem, I present a problem, but I also present solutions. I wanted people to believe that there is hope out there, and that, within that hope, there's healing. And once we're healed in a way, well, veterans, we do, but I really want to see civilians take this on too. And I think there's a lot of people out there. It's not just a veteran trait where we look around, it's like, okay, who else can I help? Who else can I serve? And it's like, so they're hurting. How can I step in? And what can I do where I'm not overstepping my bounds, but I'm a good support. And because like we all have our level in life, we all have our what we hope, big hopes, right? Big hopes for a big life. And I want everybody to go for that because it scares the crap out of you, man. Every day that I was making this movie, I was scared. I was scared because it's like I was off. I had a lot of weight in those interviews.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I'm pushing this, well, it's playing at the Babcock a week from yeah, a week from tonight, the 20th.
That's the first time it'll be shown.
Actually, it's the third time in Billings.
The third time in Billings.
Yeah, but but this is the first time that I'm really starting to think about me in this public speaking
Yeah.
space. It's just not, I mean, as a crew, I was always in the dark and created the dark. I'd turn off the lights and I'd create, have my own lights working, and it's like, okay, that area is lit and I'm over here in the shadows. And now I'm having to be in the light, and it's very uncomfortable. Um, and so the heart again, that's the beautiful thing about this movie is that it has done nothing but make me face myself the entire time. And I just want people to be encouraged, like, you do the scariest thing possible and you're gonna be great. There's no reason to be afraid because we're gonna falter anyway. You might as well be doing something that, would benefit you greatly. And the cool thing is that I've made so many mistakes that you kind of get good at, oh, well, I don't want to do that again. And okay, I got to make this work still. And so you find ways to make things work, and that's, in every profession, whatever that is, right?
Well,
I'm
and I
not
think
saying like,
it's
I'm
not,
not saying hiding bodies, hiding crimes, but
yeah.
but yes, let's be
I think it's just such a great example. On this podcast, I interview people who have created businesses out of their genius and their passion, and that's exactly what you've done. And you also kind of show the lesson that it's not easy because you've got to face a lot of those questions yourself, and it's a big mindset shift for yourself
for sure.
and to step into your creativity and to trust your intuition and what it's telling
Yeah,
you. Like there's a
absolutely.
big mindset shift that happens with all levels of entrepreneurship. But now you're putting this creativity to the world, and now you kind of feel the call to be an advocate and to be out
Yeah,
there and
yeah.
really make a difference. And I think that's extremely powerful.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate
Yeah.
this time, and you're so gracious because it could be anybody. Um, Part of what one of the, part of the questions that you had asked previously, and it's the being vulnerable because I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm just not. But the cool thing about when you're doing something that's so scary and so difficult is that it knocks you so hard on your keister that you have nothing else to do but tell somebody that you're kind of hurting. There are days, I couldn't get out of bed. Um, there were days that I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Took those days off. It's like, okay, I'll just call that Sunday. Yeah, whatever day it was, we'll just call that Sunday. And then I get back to work the next day. There were days like, after I made the movie, I mean, it's a process because it's not one day where you are going through stuff. Well, and we are talking, and Chris is like, he's somebody I reached out to. I was, having some, real tough stuff going, and I reached out to him, and he and his wife just, I mean, he's up here, he works up here, but he also travels down to Texas because that's where his wife is. And so he was up here, she was down there, and I was in Kansas. So, I mean, it doesn't matter, where you're at. It's like what matters is that, you have people, and that develops as you're doing something that is so difficult because it just happens. And I think it's, I'm as guilty as anybody as, thinking too much before I get into doing. People tell me, it's like, dude, stop thinking so much. I can't help it. That's what I do.
Yeah.
But
Creator. That's what you
yeah.
do.
But yeah, man, I mean, it's just you just reach out and you just find people. It's, and I can't wish people enough. If I could have a genie and conversation with a genie and some wishes, that would be one of them. It's like just people going for it. That would be the biggest, that's my wish for everybody. Is just go for it, you know.
I always use the end of the interview to ask, what's your advice for other people that are thinking, I've got this really cool thing, but I don't know if it's going to produce anything. and you have a pretty good piece of advice.
Yeah, well, I kind of touched on it. I mean, just
Yeah.
go for it, because it's one of those things where when you start doing it, things present. And then it's like, okay, well, I can only do this. It's like, oh, whoa, never mind. I did this. And it's like, okay, then because it's my next big is, well, getting it in a theater. Again, this is the Babcock, and it's a massive, it's amazing. I love the Babcock, and I'm so, so blessed to get a, second chance at it. And so that's one thing that filmmakers don't get sometimes. I strongly, if you're a filmmaker, I mean, just make your own documentary because it's gonna so challenge you, and then make it so good that you believe you can get it sold. Put everything into it and make it so that you know it can get sold. That's my next step. So I'm in a theater. I want it to get played in other places, and it has, but like it could be more. Now that because like I said, we always have that more, right? And so what is our more? Whatever that more is, people say vision boards. People say, like stuff like that. That's the more. How do you define more? And just go for it.
Great piece of advice. Well, I am thrilled that that it's showing this Friday. It's
Yes, ma'am.
or next Friday. It's
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
And what would you, if people want to find the movie and they're not in Billings or they want to follow you, where can they find you?
Facebook Saving 22 is a Facebook page.
Okay.
And it's like what I'm doing is I'm conducting interviews with some of the people that I filmed because I believe in them so. They're doing such great work. I want them I don't it's the movie was never about me. And that was been kind of the difficulty of getting to this point where I'm a talker now. Because it was never about me. And I've never wanted the spotlight. And now I'm, Saving 22, the movie is pushing me to get into that realm and arena. But I just encourage people to yeah, just follow on Facebook, Saving 22. I will, I'm posting. I'm posting things with interviews that I've gone around with people that the best I can that are in the vicinity I'm in. And it's like, hey man, it's like, okay, so equine therapy, horses, spirits, healing. It's like you can see their logos right there. They're here in Billings. Is like, as you go up three, it's that bend. It's a equine therapy, and they are one of them, and suicide's going away, because of these people, and I believe in them so strongly. Dog Tag Buddies, Adaptive Performance Center, Veterans Navigation. I mean, there's so many that, I know I'm leaving some out, and it's nothing, my apologies because I don't want the disrespect, but it's just, I guess to also is people often ask me what can they do? My urge is join a nonprofit. It's like, what's your skill set? What is it's like accounting? Awesome. They need help with figure out money, grants. What skill set do you want to learn? Grant writing, maybe it's setting up events. There's something out there that a nonprofit needs that skill set. And you feel good too.
Yep. Giving back,
Yes,
serving,
ma'am.
serving others,
Yeah,
for sure.
100%. That's
Well,
part of it.
Gary, I know this is not the last time we'll be hearing about you and one of
But
your projects. You've got a
yes,
lot
ma'am.
of ideas floating around that I know you're going to get into the world because you need to. You
Yes,
know,
ma'am. Appreciate it.
that's great.
Means a lot. So yeah, I'm honored because we basically know each other for hours long.
Yeah.
Hours ago.
Hours ago. It happens.
Yeah.
Serendipity happens at the right
Yeah,
time.
man. Yeah, man.
Well,
So
great. Well, thank you for coming on to the
thank
interview
you.
today. I was certainly inspired by your story and by your vulnerability and by the message that you send with, yes, suicide and veterans and awareness about that, but then just you're stepping into your genius to be able to influence others. And I
Yes,
think that's
ma'am.
tremendous. So thank
Yep.
you for telling your
Appreciate
story.
appreciate the teamwork.
100%. And all of you genius entrepreneurs out there, or people that think your genius might make a difference in somebody else's life, you're not going to know unless you try it. So get it out there. And we will see you next time on the Genius Entrepreneur Podcast when we tell other stories about people that are inspiring with their experience and their genius. See you next time.